afternoon. The next session, the panel discussion is on leveraging innovation to augment the admissions process. Ultimately, admissions is a fundamental part of the whole education system. It's the sort of the entry point, and everything sort of stems from there. So the panelists will try to discuss how technological innovations has impacted this overall process of admission. It's my pleasure to call the panelists on stage. Can we have Dr. Dwarika Prasad Uniyal, Pro Vice Chancellor, RV University, Bengaluru? Great. So we expect some sharing. Can we have Dr. Vidya Shankar Shetty, Pro Vice Chancellor, REVA University, Bangalore? Dr. Muddu Vinay, Pro Vice Chancellor, Presidency University, Bangalore. Professor S.K. Prasad, Dean of Srinivas University, Bangalore. Sridhara Murthi, Director, Jain University, Bangalore. And Dr. Sahana Madan, Professor and Head of Department, MBA, Dayananda Sagar Academy of Technology and Management. So I will start with you, Dr. Uniyal. The first question, again, as earlier mentioned, that admissions is a sort of the entry point, especially in the higher education echelon. My question is, during the pandemic, last couple of years, when every process sort of went into an online kind of mode, even the admission process was not an exception. And here in education, the higher education system, one challenge was many of the admission in higher education was done on the basis of the assessment done at the school level. And most of this assessment during the last 2 years was done online, which was a sudden whole paradigm change in the assessment process. So how did that impact the admissions process in higher education, and going forward, has those impact been permanent? Has it changed the model itself, or is it now again sort of back to normal?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for waiting for this almost the penultimate session. And it's been a long day for everyone, so I'll keep it short. I think the new normal ensured that we never went back to the old one. The pandemic has fundamentally changed us physically, mentally, philosophically, the way we look at lives, the way we look at academic systems, the way we look at the teaching learning process. And ma'am, your session was amazing. The way, you've talked about from 82 to 2022, 40 years of transition, the way student body has changed. I think a lot has changed even in the admissions, even for the universities. For the two reasons, I think in the past we were overdoing it. You also look at how the coaching industry thrives on the fact that we want to pride ourselves that we have some of the toughest examinations in the world. The IIT JEEs, the CAT, and I have taught for many, many years in the IIM system, and I do have my own doubts about the filter the CAT uses, including I've taught in the IES Academy, which is another toughest so-called examination called the UPSC. And what quality I've got in my classrooms, again, I have doubt about whether it really discriminates or filters the right kind of talent. So I think we were in the garb of largest examinations and the way we were doing this whole process. I personally feel that we overdo it. Secondly, the transition was tough because it required for us to do a lot more in the past offline interviews. In 5 minutes, we claim that we can know the best talent and change, make the differences between this versus that and all that. I think all those myths were debunked. a well-written, this was before chat GPT, I guess, so a well-written video SOP or a normal SOP or an essay or maybe a Zoom talk with the student. But even if the parents are prompting, there were cases when parents were prompting, it's okay. It's a grade 12 student. We shouldn't be expecting too much from them to when they're coming into an undergrad space. In the postgrad, yes, of course, we need to be a little bit more careful. But yes, it has fundamentally changed the way we look at admissions. What kind of things and the properties or qualities of the student we should be looking at. Secondly, we also need to tie up about what kind of examination, like for example, in design school, we're looking at a lot more portfolio based. In the School of Liberal Arts, we're looking at a lot many of the other activities the student has done, not just the test scores. In the School of Business or School of Computer Science, yes, the school-based marks were still considered as a filter, but I think people are also trying to look at a lot more tangential thinking, a lot more creative thinking when they are coming to a business school or a school of computer science or other. So I think school-wise filters are coming up. A lot more holistic selection process has been made into. And faculty now have time to view the applications, and technology has helped. Because through a portal now, you can look at admissions, you can get the access to all the details. Okay. And so when you're talking to the student, even you get 5 to 10 minutes, I think a lot is possible then to kind of filter it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So to have the crux of the point that you mentioned, a couple of areas, a more holistic approach to the entire process, and sort of a lot of filters are now being applied. I'll come to you, Dr. Vidya, and a more specific question, what I asked Dr. Uniyal. Ma'am mentioned in the earlier session, when the school assessment exams, what we have seen when the pure online assessment was being done, scores which were in the 90s, is suddenly when the physical mode of assessment came down to 40s again. Now, my direct question is that how would that impact the admissions process?
See, I think throughout our earlier generations, we've always looked at the eligibility criteria to be the borderline for any admission that we make into the university. But I think the pandemic has given us a very different perspective when it comes to, admissions for that matter. I agree with Afisa when she spoke about, how plagiarism seems to be on the run. And now with what my fellow panelists spoke about ChatGPT, and now Pichai also announcing BARD, I think a step ahead of that. I'm really wondering as to how exactly we would gauge these students coming into the undergrad levels. But having said that, I'm just going to connect it to the previous session, which was very thoughtfully woven by both the speakers. I think it's high time for us to redefine assessment, with ChatGPT or BARD coming in now, I think admissions may no longer be based on the eligibility criteria or on the kind of marks that you are going to get in. And I think it's going to be more defined based on the skills that a student brings in. It's a larger challenge for us now at the higher education level, solely because we probably will have to redefine assessment. Assessment may no longer be the pen and paper or the paperless examinations that we're talking about. There would be a lot more challenge for us educators to set up assessments which would be more challenging for a student. So it would be more, open book assessment. It would be more challenging a question. It would be more challenging a task for the student to look into and think critically and creatively and get into it. I do not say that, the last 2 years can be just condoned for having, resorted to some of these practices, because situation brought them into what they got into, So we are all here in this room who have gone through the pandemic situation. And I think we were totally unprepared for it. So having said that, I understand that the last 2 to 3 years, we've kind of seamlessly taken them in, sometimes with compassion, sometimes by saying that this is all that we could get, and sometimes by saying that this is what technology has a bane as well. Forget about the boon, it's also a bane when it comes to assessing and understanding the right kind of candidates that we would take into the undergrad program.
Okay. Thanks. So, in fact, I mentioned there as an example. Obviously, it's not just one constituency. The students can be blamed for the part. Uh, I'm sure even the assessment patterns needed to be changed. The high scores where we have a lot of developed countries open book exams, but there the assessment pattern, the questions are in a different way. You can't just mug up or just look from an open book for a direct answer. Okay, Dr. Muddu Vinay, I'll come to you next. What ma'am said about this, the assessment pattern itself is changing, the eligibility criteria changing, more like how an industry, when they hire an employee, how they look at eligibility criteria from a more holistic kind of scenario. My question is, are the academicians or the educators geared up for that sort of even assessing? So the people who are assessing, are they themselves really conversant to conduct that process? What's your opinion?
I think first of all, thanks to APEC, you were given the opportunity to be in this panel today. Now, your question whether what the assessment has been given to the students, whether it is admission process going on. Now, as previous panels already told that technology made the change. Now, when you say that whether we are ready for the assessments of the people, but I say that my experience is that teachers are not ready. Yes, teachers are ready only in top 20 or 25 institutions. And
Okay.
in this gathering, most of the people will talk only the tier 1 institutions. Nobody is bothered about tier 2, tier 3 institutions. Where your question will not impact in the tier 2, tier 3 institutions. It's not happening. Because previous, with this assignment, I was in Dehradun, Uttarakhand. The question which you asked, that assessment strategy with admission process, no, it's not happening.
Okay.
My
So
direct question to the government also, we are only seeing the tier 1 institutions. Why we are not making the impact to the tier 2, tier 3 institutions? Now, the technology changed everything because pandemic made the institutions to go to the technology and see to that. But whether it is categorizing to 150 universities in India now at present and 54,000 colleges, I think out of 1,050 universities, I can say that 700 universities are not categorizing that. When you see the quality of the students there, they are the same what they are completely. Everybody are moving to the metropolitan city.
okay.
If you see the Bangalore, especially, most of the people are from the North India, from the tier 2, tier 3 institutions.
Okay, so the lack of uniformity or a lack of consistency in the process across the, and so basically we may say a lack of democratization of uh, eligible students getting into the right places. Professor Prasad, my question to you will be, we are hearing about the technology and its impact on the admissions process. But my question is, overall, how is the admission process with the help of technology getting integrated into the overall system? How is this overall system? We an academic, an institution will have maybe a CRM system, maybe different other technologies. How is the admission system integrating with the overall ecosystem so that it works perhaps smoothly? If you look at it in silo, then maybe it will not function in that respect. So, what are your views on that? Ah, okay, sorry.
So, good afternoon, everyone, and it's indeed a pleasure to be a part of this August audience. And I thank APAC for inviting me to share my experiences. Before that, I would like to just say a few things. I have seen of course, most of our panelists also, the entire cycle of this transformation of admissions. Because in 80s, when I was working, when I started working, we never had a sort of this type of admission process, or it was simply admission notification, if I remember. No visuals, nothing. And that too very much limited in a place where we are working. In that place, we used to give a small advertisement, and then people used to join. Later, we have seen, now we have come to an age where it is completely driven by marketing and branding strategies, and all these things have impacted the process. There are some plus points, like the quality of admissions has also improved in some ways. And I'm looking at admission from another perspective also. With your permission, I'll just share a couple of views on that. See, if you look at the admission happens to be the final part in the process, in the decision process, before a student enters a campus. So that is something like but having said that, it depends on what information he has and what he understood, or what he noticed in the process, how this communication reached him. So now that's what, when I go to earlier days, it was just a notification saying that we offer this program and then this is the eligibility. But now it is totally different. We are in a different point. Here, one other thing is, we have to fine tune a few other things to make the admission right. That is where sometimes I find a gap. This again, I'm taking it from a concept called 7 P's of marketing. We have 4 P's, that is product, price, promotion, and place. And the remaining 3 P's are people, and the process, and physical evidence. This is where sometimes in some places we are missing this. The product, when the product is strong, when what your program is about, when you can strongly convey that, document that, that is what we are missing most. Because before coming to this, I was seeing a few randomly some websites. So sometimes I felt that the information content, or what they are offering, how is it differentiated, that will have an impact on admissions.
Okay.
And then the process. We are talking about the learning process, and a lot of changes have happened in the COVID, and now in the new normal, we are also aligning with many things like the blended learning. All these things are in place, and they will continue also. In fact, in our place, we want to have 30 to 40% online, and this time I am designing the programs. Actually, we are setting up a new campus here in Bangalore. I belong to Srinivas University, Bangalore. After 33 years of existence in Bangalore, now we are coming to Bangalore, and we want to set up a sort of university with a lot of difference.
Okay.
So give me just 1 more minute. So this product part we have to address, then the process, and thirdly, people. When these things are right, all our admission efforts will yield the best results. So some alignment, I'm not saying things are wrong, but some alignment may be required. that if we do it, it is going to be a successful, we can scale up and then live to the expectations. And perhaps now India also is becoming a global hub for learning. We have tremendous opportunities, particularly after COVID. People are looking at Indian institutions to choose instead of going abroad. So these are the what's called advantages which we could encash on.
Okay. So basically, if I may sum it up, alignment, a modern day alignment of the 7 Ps, you say would augment the admission process and enhance its viability. Professor Murthy, I will now come to you. And my question is, someone touched upon this. When we are talking of an admissions process, if we go beyond the top 20-25 institutions, and that too from very select metros, we are looking at a more if we look at admission process in a more cosmopolitan kind of way, where all kind of students from all different kind of background uh, and from different geographies are coming, and you need to have but some sort of commonality in the admission process, the criteria, eligibility criteria. So how are academic institutions looking at managing that commonality?
So we started with the challenge of pandemic, causing the compelling reason for innovation. There was also another paradigm. In fact, after the pandemic, we faced with the problem of, in the admissions, there was more demand than normal immediately after the pandemic. So we had to innovate, again, using the power of technology to be able to cope with the higher demand. So essentially, all the known tools and techniques relating to the digital marketing and CRM, and then, online methods for assessment, where, even today, we have the power of AI to support the proctoring and, to maintain and provide greater accessibility and convenience for those who seek, irrespective of the geography. That facility was created, and in fact, it was a discovery. And putting all this together was one element of innovation, which came as a compelling reason when the pandemic, started, pandemic ended. And the second part we found was the NEP, onset of NEP. There is always, our paradigm is the best institutions, as you were telling, its paradigm is exclusive paradigm. Only, you have cutoff percentages, you choose the best and so on. But if you think of why not others, why can't they be eligible for best of education? Such an inclusive strategy demands again an innovative approach. And it is here that if you need to give such an opportunity for all the people beyond those high performers, opportunity to study, educate, our approach to the assessments, as well as the their ability to pursue high quality education should be there. Now, technology definitely have been put to use. Many institutions have learned very well in the game, this game. But basic question is the affordability for the students to come to the best of the institutions. It is here in the admission process what kind of innovation that we can bring in. And it is not only in the admission process, as you have mentioned, this is also to be tied up with the subsequent life cycle of the student in the institution. So for this, we had to, again, think very hard and, remodel, re-engineer our curricular approach to have a practicality and also ability of a student to earn something to be able to, support his or her education. It is here we have been using technology, the project-centric learning, and digital platforms for a student to be able to interface with the society's needs and use their creativity to create products and services which could be even marketed, and thereby the students could learn how to interface the user's needs and support themselves in the education without affecting their own learning process.
So innovations in the admission process and accordingly undertaking those changes. Dr. Sahana Madan, I'll come to you. One important part of admission process is always the counseling programs, and the counseling, the results or impact of counseling is often very critical. So as a head of an MBA, where maybe counseling gains even more traction in that scenario. So what are your views on the importance of counseling, and how have things changed?
Good evening, one and all. At the outset, I heartily thank APAC for having given me this wonderful opportunity, sir, to be alongside such esteemed panelists as well. Well, I am at a juncture, to share, not as a disclaimer coming in there, but my humble submission is that I am not directly into admissions, though. As sir said, I will wait for the admissions team perhaps to roll out students for us and then kickstart the journey that begins there, right? So I think I will go ahead to share my perspectives in terms of probably what are the students' expectations in terms of admissions, and how do we intertwine each of the key stakeholders, so as a result of that, we strengthen the admission process as well. So with that note, if I may just set your thought, thinking for a moment, what does it take for a student to really walk into the halls of a Harvard or a Stanford or a Kellogg School of Management? So I think a simple fundamental aspect would be practice, practice, and practice, right? So when you're talking about the practice factor, I think all of us have already experienced what the pandemic has really taught us. And we've moved and transited to a stage now where we are really practicing new, different, evolving ways of functionality. So when I say functionality, that perhaps includes how do we teach better? How do we link, the blended learning platforms? How do we strengthen the admission platforms? How do we ensure that the student engagement is perhaps the best, in terms of the placement efforts that we are looking at? So what are the best placement opportunities that we can perhaps provide for our students, right? So this is where I kind of see admissions as a holistic process and an ongoing process perhaps. So when you're really looking at a holistic process, I think it is important and imperative for all of us to involve each of these key stakeholders that we have. So sir, just coming back to the question that you specifically asked me to address around, in terms of how the counseling, can really be an enabler in the admission process. So I think the first point of, action should be here in terms of having the formal counselor who are in place to have a much more, acquaintance in terms of what the student essentially requires. So the student point-to-point contact is, I think, extremely important there in terms of first understanding. And as a new perspective that we could really look forward for is also in terms of the student profiling. We start this exercise much later. Once the student comes into class, we ask them for, them to be profiled in each of these. So why not we kickstart this right at the application stage itself? Because to me, when I interact with students, they definitely have a lot of challenges associated in filling up the application form itself and then taking up the next set of process that are perhaps involved in the admissions, which probably includes their written test coming in there or the GDPIs that ends up with, and in between you have the essay writing or each of these coming in there. So why not, gear up students in terms of, sharing those personal stories that we are looking at, apart from giving them the regular topics that we essentially administer during the interview process, right? So which I think essentially becomes a very critical aspect of how the counseling can essentially happen. If that can kind of be taken care at that stage, so you kind of gear up students to ensure that they are prepared on those lines. Instead of waitlisting the candidate or instead of rejecting a candidate, why not perhaps gear them up on that front? So that, at least they cater to the requirement of what the B school essentially requires. And I also honestly feel that the CVs that we talk about or the student insights, the basic information or the insights that we gather should not essentially be just tailored to what the basic requirements of the program or the curriculum is, but perhaps look at what the MBA program offered by a given institute essentially requires. So I think if we can slowly start getting up on each of these parameters and much more as we extend our thoughts, I think that should definitely do a great good deal in terms of the counseling process. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks. Now we have finished one round with all the panelists. I'll now come to each of you and very briefly for 1 minute each, particularly in your institution, what fundamental change have you done in the admissions process, and more importantly, next 12 months or next maybe couple of semesters, what are the planned changes that you intend to do? I'll start with you.
Thank you. But you touched upon the counseling as an important aspect. The same goes to the schools because they are the talent providers to the universities. So there are a very structured approach to counseling now has started entering schools. So universities like us have started partnering with schools and institutions like IC3, International College and Career Counseling, and we engage with them. We meet the counselors, teachers, and principals in the regional forums and the national forums. We engage with the school counselors so that we can tell them about the offerings the university has, so that when they go back and counsel the students, and which is happening online and offline, very, very importantly now across many cases, and the whole idea of Ganesh and his team is to have counseling in each school. And we support that. And I volunteer myself personally, and I travel to a lot of schools personally on our cause to speak to them. So that is one where we are essentially trying to tackle the case of student trying to figure out what is it that they would want to do in life and engaging with that. That is one we are doing. Second, in my own institution, we are using digital technologies, as Sarah said, that is becoming extremely important. The discovery, the program discovery, the university discovery, the degree discovery, all that is now happening a lot more online than it used to be in our cases, which means you need to be very, very clear and present and across all the fora where students of that age group are present and they are hanging around. So if that means that you need to be at Instagram, you better be on Instagram. If that means that your website has got all the information and it's all self-sufficient, you need to ensure that. And once that is outreach, then comes to the our side when the admission process is there. I think constant communication is extremely important. Whether somebody is getting accepted or not accepted, or we need to have that kind of a clear-cut communication going again and again to the parents and to the students, so that they very well know that, okay, maybe this organization might not be right for them or university, but maybe something else will be there. So clear case of reaching them early from the school itself, having a conversation with them, bringing them on board, using technology platform and engaging with them continuously pre and post is what is all our institutions are doing. Thank you.
So a constant and precise engagement process. Okay, Dr. Shetty.
At REVA, we've completely automated the system. We thought it was quicker to reach out to a wider catchment, to reach out to a wider audience, and to ensure that the needs of today's generation is met with. They are far more digital. They are in a hurry to
Here,
do things.
if I may just interrupt, while obviously automation will help, but one question, some of the points that came up, that there is a human element, a more qualitative kind of assessment is required also. So does a full automation take care of that, or is that a hindrance?
See, when we talk about automation, it is the entire process, which is very, very quicker, simpler, because the generation today is used to everything that's instant, everything that is quick. They don't have the hurry. I mean, where's the time for them? They kind of flip through browsers just like that, So where's the time for them to even sit through something and listen to it and go through it and come in and go out, several times? So where does the human element come in? The human element comes in when it comes to the counseling part of it, make it more personalized for them. Ensure that, even the name for that matter counts, So I address you by your name, but I don't use you as an applicant. Because I think today's world is like that, where there's a single child at home, there are nuclear families. They are so used to being, helicoptered by the parents to a certain extent. So, and the first impressions matter, be it a movie, be it a product, be it anything for that matter. It's a first impression that matters, and so the first impression counts, and that's exactly where the website plays a larger role. The social media handles play a larger role. Ensuring that all information is, available at touch point plays a larger role. And thereafter comes in the human element where the counselor takes care of it. I think process-wise, it gives the counselor a lot more time to make admission a very personalized experience, give them a different student experience rather than make the process, more manual and strenuous for the applicant as well as for the counselor.
Simplifies the overall process. Dr. Vinay.
I have only one word. Admission process, we want to get it quality, quality, quality. Without quality,
Excellent.
nothing is there. And we, Presidency University, follow the quality and make the admission process also a quality process. So my one word is quality, quality, quality.
Great. Yes.
Thank you. Actually, as a dean, I am not directly connected with admissions, but certainly I chaired at least 6 to 8 meetings recently in the last 8 months or so. One of my, that's what I was telling my people also, same thing. First of all, we have to make sure that our communication is right. The information, we are now on the job of making our website more attractive, or more, it should be able to attract the attention and also retain the person to go through further details. It's not just flipping through. And second thing, which has given us very good what's called response, is our social media. So where our teams are like interacting with various prospective students. And another intervention which we are going to launch is what we call career talks. So we want to go to the colleges and schools and address the students and see that they understand what is difference in our education, how it would help them in making a career.
Very subtle digital marketing kind of thing which will enhance the brand equity of the admissions process.
True. Thank you.
Great. Professor Murthi.
Two major steps in view of the environment. We would like to make the admission related eligibility and the process tuned to the needs and assessments of creating entrepreneurs. In fact, the founder of the Jain group of institutions, his dream is to make the university say, job seekers don't apply, job creators welcome. We need to move towards that. And if we have to do it, obviously our way of interfacing with the potential students have to be different. So this is one step. The second step is the NEP dreams about creating holistic graduates and providing flexibility and choice. And towards this, definitely the rigid admission eligibility criteria that were practiced all along has to be reviewed. This is second aspect which is going to be addressed.
So making the eligibility criteria more flexible. Dr. Sahana, you have the last word.
All right, sir. Well, again, I'm sharing the thoughts which I have drawn from what the admission team perhaps has been doing at the institute back. So I think we have certainly now embarked on on leveraging the technology in terms of relying on a third-party, technology solution provider, wherein we kind of make that entire process, end-to-end process coming in there. So we will rely for all the other aspects with the strong request and a recommendation coming in terms of the humanistic touch that we still look forward for in spite of all the digitalization that would still go in, is to strengthen the counseling system back. So where we probably expect our counselors to stretch, invest a little time and stretch beyond their, routine therapeutic duties of, addressing the students back, and probably leverage technology at its best, and again, not to miss out on the student point-to-point connect coming in there. So I think, sir, 4 E's can quantify that, and probably close my expression on that as well, that we have already started witnessing and experiencing the change, right? And in terms of everything that the digital transformation and the pandemic has brought about. So we have experienced it now. So we start, enabling the change. And I think finally we need to empower the students, the fraternity, and the entire community of education there around. So I think with that, I end my note. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we come to a conclusion of this panel discussion on augmenting the admissions process and how do you innovate for that. Before we disperse, I would request Sangamitra Mohanty, one of the co-founders of APAC News Network, to hand over a small memento of appreciation to all the panelists.
Rajneesh,
Yeah.
he asked me to say a few
Yes.
things. So I'm just wanted to look, because he told me that I need to say. So this is for all the educators here and for the people who are inspiring. These are my 2 lines from my poem. It's called Umeedon Ke Pankh. So these are all what all educators, all dedicated to all of you guys, is सपनों को उड़ने के लिए हवाई जहाज का टिकट नहीं लगता. सपनों को उड़ने के लिए हवाई जहाज का टिकट नहीं लगता, बस पलकों को उम्मीदों के पंख चाहिए. The second line is for you guys कि ख्याल पकाने के चूल्हे कम नहीं, ख्याल पकाने के चूल्हे कम नहीं, नई सोच के कोयलों को चिंगारी चाहिए, सपनों को उड़ने के लिए हवाई जहाज का टिकट नहीं लगता. And the last line is on people who are creating academic institutions कि बिल्डिंगों से academic institutions नहीं बनते, बच्चों से और टीचर्स से academic institutions बनते हैं, कि सुर्ख कंक्रीट की इमारतों में ज्ञान कसमसाता है, सुर्ख कंक्रीट की इमारतों में ज्ञान कसमसाता है, विचारों को पनपने के लिए हरी घास खुली धूप चाहिए, सपनों को उड़ने के लिए हवाई जहाज का टिकट नहीं लगता, बस पलकों को उम्मीदों के पंख चाहिए. So आप सब, you are all inspiring leaders, all dedicated to you guys who are giving umeedon ke pankh to all our students. Thank you. Shabakar.
Thanks. So I think to sir first. Dr. Vinay. Professor Prasad. Professor Murthi. Dr. Sahana. And